Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
It is Wednesday, and all of our guests today, including Craig Button, standing by, brought to you by the Alberni Power and Marine RPM Group, located in Port Alberni. Alberni Power and Marine is one of Vancouver Island's most trusted boat dealerships, the largest Mercury Marine dealership in Canada. Their service team just won for the fourth straight year a CSI score above the national average. Make your appointment for the 2023 boating season at albernipowermarine.com. He works for a Toronto company. Spent a lot of time in his childhood in Montreal. Okay, but lives in Calgary now. Now, do you remember a long time ago the Calgary Cannons?
Oh yeah, AAA.
They were the AAA farm club of the Seattle Mariners.
Oh.
So I'm going to guess that when it comes to Mariners versus Jays, Craig Button, who joins us now, TSN scouting director, is pulling for the Seattle Mariners against the Toronto Blue Jays. Have they got that connection right, Craig?
Yeah, you got that connection right. I got to tell you a funny story. Not long after, but shortly after the Cannons left Calgary, they had a touring team come in here featuring Jose Canseco. Mm-hmm. So it was Jose was certainly not the same player that we saw. Right. the Bash brothers, right? He was part of that Bash brothers, and certainly wasn't the same player. But it was interesting. The stadium was pretty much full to watch Jose Canseco. But you know what? I'm not anti-Jays because it would be nice to see Seattle beat the Jays. So I don't want to be anti-Jays because I'm a Yankees fan.
Oh,
so I think that Seattle, they had a little bit of a rough patch here the last month, but I would fear the Mariners if I were the Blue Jays. I would fear the Mariners because they're capable in a short series of winning 2 games, and I think that they get things rolling in the right direction, that they could pose a real problem for the Blue Jays.
Well, I tell you, Jose Canseco on his way up to the bigs, coming to Vancouver.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
Oakland A's farm club. What a the natural they called him back then. Yep. What a big deal that was in Vancouver. All right, hockey, Craig. Canucks winless in 5 exhibition games. They have an NHL-esque roster tonight in Abbotsford against the Oilers. How much stock do you put in a preseason?
Well, here's what I would say for the Vancouver Canucks in the preseason. So you're trying to get yourself in the state of readiness for when the regular season starts. And I get that. But state of readiness is also getting some of the details in your game, really sharpened up. The game that they played, and regardless of who's in the lineup, you have to have details in your game. And certainly the Vancouver Canucks, to this point in time, haven't looked like a team that has their details in place. And if you don't get those details in place, you're going to struggle. And, it was interesting to hear Bo Horvat's comments about being a leader and being a captain, and it starts with him. It starts with him in practice, and it starts with the example that he shows. And I think it's a great example of Bo's leadership. But I think that he's touching on exactly what ails the Vancouver Canucks at this point in time, the details and making sure, because making sure that you have those in place, because once the regular season starts, the forgiveness is going to evaporate. The points are real. The games now become meaningful. So you start to fall short and you start chasing it. It becomes a hard uphill battle to try to catch up to it again. And there's no better example for the Vancouver Canucks than last season. And it's great to say that they ran out of games down the stretch because, in the 57 games under Bruce Boudreau, they played really well. And it's great to say they ran out of games. But if you don't start the year and get those points, they're going to be talking about the same thing next at the end of this season. Oh, we played well enough, but we ran out of games. The games start. There used to be a point in time where you could say, okay, we can catch up, right? Game 1 matters, and game 2 matters. And if you don't get points early in the season, it's hard to make up that ground later on in the season. The strength of each conference, I think, is pretty evident. So a slow start, you're not doing yourself any favors. So I would say meaningful in getting those details in place, and leading into the regular season next week, Vancouver has to be dialed into those areas.
Craig, De Kaiser released by the Canucks on the PTO. Jake Virtanen still out there in Edmonton. PTO. Sonny Milano, Daryl Sutter said the other night, not doing super well. What do you look for, Craig, in a PTO, and what has he got to do to make that team?
Who's that?
Any
Milano?
PTO, any PTO.
Oh, any PTO. Sorry. Okay, I didn't know if you were talking specifically. Well, you bring in a PTO. Obviously, a player that may have been hoping for a contract and didn't get one now has to show that he should earn a contract. And two things have to happen. You have to show that, number one, you got game to contribute to a team. Number two, you got to show that you can displace somebody else on the roster. I said last week, Jake Virtanen has done nothing for the Edmonton Oilers, in my view. He's done nothing. Yeah. So, you know what? I don't see him earning a contract. Sonny Milano, he's a second-line scoring winger. To me, he's one of those guys that's a light offensive player. If you're not going to score, you're not helping the team. So when Daryl Sutter talks about Sonny Milano, and you've heard Daryl talk about this a lot over the years, you know what? It's just not about scoring. If you're not scoring, that's fine. We need you to score, but you better do other things in the game. Sonny doesn't do those things. Danny DeKeyser, he's gone through some serious injuries in the last few years, and certainly that's set him back a little bit. So, I expected to see a little bit more of Danny with the Vancouver Canucks when he played. But again, you're trying to upgrade your defense. You're not trying to just add a player that will just give you some of the same old. And I think for DeKeyser, he clearly didn't do enough in my view, and certainly in the Vancouver Canucks view. So if you're not showing that you can be a contributor at the NHL level, whatever team that you're on a PTO with, to earn a contract and displace somebody else that maybe they were looking for competition, you're not going to earn it. So to me, those three players haven't done anything. And there's others around the league that haven't done anything. Zach Aston Reese, who's in Toronto, I would fully expect him to earn a contract with Toronto because he's done exactly what I said, you need to do. Other players haven't. And probably it's another really good example of why they didn't get contracts.
Yeah, no kidding. Craig, saw a list the other day. I didn't write it. 6 coaches who are possibly going to get fired the earliest. They do this every year. You know that, Craig.
Yeah, I know.
Sheldon Keefe's on it. Bruce Boudreau's on it. How important for some teams and some coaches to get off to good starts, Craig?
Well, again, I talked, Rick, just about the importance of game one. And the 2 points earned in the beginning of the season are every bit as important because at the end of the season, not only are you chasing points, but you're also hoping other teams lose. So if you take care of your own business, you don't have to worry about scoreboard watching and trying to, if they lose, or what's the math working out? Just play and win and get your points. So, we can look at different scenarios. I think it also works in reverse. Like so much of the time, the coach that wins Coach of the Year is the coach that most people team they underestimated, and they far exceeded expectations. And what ends up happening with coaches that get fired earlier in the season, and I'll call early in the season 30, 35 games in, are most likely teams that had high expectations and they haven't been met, and they feel that a change can serve them well. I mean, Ken Holland never fired a coach in season until he relieved Dave Tippett last year of his coaching. And Ken said, he goes, I'm looking for something different. He goes, I don't like to do this, but I needed to make a change because I needed to see if this can affect something positive. Well, we saw what it did. And it was clearly because the Oilers weren't performing to expectation and they were at risk of falling out of the playoff hunt. And I think that's another thing with parity in the league. You cannot fall out of the playoff hunt early, you're chasing. And that's why you see coaching changes and why managers are looking to see some real strong evidence of good play early on, whether it be 20 games or 25 games. And if not, there's no question that there's going to be a lot of rumors abound about coaching changes.
And Craig, very, very quickly, is Bo Horvat worth as much as Sean Couturier?
Yes. I will say yes. I think that, first of all, prices for players continuously go up. Yeah. And I think that Bo Horvat is a really good player. I think Bo Horvat is, we can use different words, core player, glue player. I think that he's an important player. And I think that what he contributes to a team becomes significant for a team trying to win. And I think that Bo at his age, the way he skates, the way he competes, I definitely think that when you ask me in that way, Donnie, I think absolutely I would say yes on Bo Horvat.
Craig, thanks so much. We'll talk to you next week. All the best.
Yeah,
Enjoy
all
the
the
baseball.
best to you too. Thanks.
You bet.
Yeah.
Thanks. Craig Button, TSN Scouting Director.